everybody. This is Dr. Mark Jesinoski. This is the Wizard Podcast, episode 17. I'm coming to you from my holdout at Jesinoski Studios in my backyard in Fallbrook, California. So I'm weathering the zombie apocalypse. As you can see, I got my trusty rolls of TP here at the ready, and I'm committed to weathering this storm with you. So, I think when things like this happen, forgive my technical difficulty, I think when something like what we're all experiencing happens, of course, everyone out there is coming up with ideas, coming up with theories, exploring their minds for why this must happen. What I'm struck by is how quickly the story that we tell ourselves is one of being a victim to something. This is something I've been chewing on for quite a long time, and something I've been trying to really put together and put together in the context of my life as much as put together in the context of sort of our collective consciousness, how we all perceive the world and relate to the world and react to the world. Something that I'm really interested in or something that I'm noticing at this time is the tendency for people to automatically take on the role of a victim, that there must be some great power out there that is intending to oppress you or use you in some way, and that you are inherently powerless to it, and that there's some conspiracy out there, some conspiracy to damage you in some ways personally. Let me just say from the beginning my intentions in sharing this point of view. My intention is not to judge you. My intention is not to hurt you. My intention is not to really tell you what to do. My intention is to practice what I have learned in exploring my own mind, my own tendencies, into looking at my own tendency to respond to the world as a victim. Recognizing that it's futile to blame your parents. It's futile to blame their parents. It's futile to blame the parents before them, because generational trauma is something that has been happening for a long, long time. We've been passing on our injuries for a long time. And the culmination of my journey has been to look within, to understand how my mind and my body and my spirit make sense of my present moment and make sense of the journey that I have been on over the course of my life, and how that influences my response in the moment. So my journey has forced me to take a good look in the mirror and recognize that sometimes I take on the role of a victim automatically, because I learned that growing up in a self-centered culture. I could say narcissistic culture, but I think a lot of people just don't. That word gets thrown around a lot. But growing up in a culture in which we all believe certain privileges are inherent to our existence, that somehow we are owed something. And when we don't get things, we blame someone. We blame our parents. We blame the authority figures around us. We take on this role of assuming that we are being subjugated by someone. Now, of course, the automatic thought that I'm guessing a lot of people have is, yeah, but this happened to me. Yeah, but my story's worse than yours. Yeah, but you haven't experienced what I've experienced. I realize that's true. And it's easy to fall into something like identity politics, where it's like, well, this group of people have been hurt more than this group of people, and therefore we should support this group over that group. And that's a dangerous game to play. It's a good way to divide people. It's a good way to perpetuate the story of injury. It's a good way to not take full responsibility of ourselves as individuals, Because certainly we can look into groups of people and see that there is injury all around us. And yeah, we can break down identities and ethnicities and group privileges and things like that. And it's good to be mindful of that. Certainly, I'm not saying to not be mindful. Do not misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm saying that we're all born into a world in the West where we believe something is owed to us, where we believe that soda pop and candy and pizza is something that's just available to all of us at all times, and that endless entertainment and fun is the goal of life. So we were born into an illusion, and that illusion told us that we were special, and that if we didn't get our needs met in the way we want, that we should be angry, that we should be frustrated, that we should feel hurt, that there's got to be someone out there trying to get us, trying to hurt us in some way. And I think what I'm saying, to cut to the chase and then to back up and kind of go through it, is that as long as we keep telling ourselves this story that we are victims, we actually empower the very people that we're afraid of to fill that vacuum of our lack of responsibility. We make ourselves into injured children. We make ourselves into injured children, and injured children can't face reality. Injured children need to live in denial. Injured children cower from the boogeyman. Injured children need to make real problems into the boogeyman because we can't face. Sometimes we don't want to face the reality of danger. We don't want to face the things that we're afraid of. We'd rather wish them away. We'd rather avoid them. We'd rather tell ourselves a story to distance ourselves from the fact that we are creatures of nature. We live in nature. Sometimes nature is scary. Sometimes nature does things that are beyond our control. There are viruses out there all the time, everywhere. Sometimes they get into our bloodstream, and sometimes they hurt some of us. Now, I'm not suggesting we should go against science and just run around exchanging spit and, make sure that we all get it. What I'm saying is, maybe stop telling the stories. I've read such ridiculous Facebook posts as of late, and just look at the behaviors that we're seeing around our communities. You go to the grocery store and all the toilet paper is missing. It's at once comical and at once profoundly alarming at how easily it is to send people scrambling like scared children. I'm going to share a Facebook post I just made to sort of provide some context. And I used to make longer Facebook posts, and I learned that was stupid because people don't tend to read them. But I just figured, since everyone's at home anyway, I would just kind of share a thought that I've been chewing on, and I'm going to share it here, and maybe that'll provide a little more context to what I'm saying. So let's just understand, not everything I'm saying is perfectly correct. I'm a person that's formulating ideas. I'm a person that's exploring complex emotions and ideas and feelings and my own story in that context. I'm not enlightened. I'm not anything more than a dude that's trying to figure shit out along the way, just like you are. And then somewhere along the line, I just decided that it's a good policy to be as honest as you can be and to just own your shit in the moment. And maybe by me being honest, maybe we can all kind of stumble through this together. And rather than constantly looking outside of ourselves for the sources of our problems, maybe we can look inward and recognize that we have internalized the injuries of the generations before us. We're all telling ourselves a story of injury, and we're all pointing the fingers outward, and we empower people who truly lack empathy, people who truly are motivated by nothing else than the lust for power, to fill the vacuum, because we do not take responsibility for ourselves as individuals, so we allow these individuals to fill the vacuum and to divide us by manipulating our fears. Children are easily divided. People who fail to take responsibility for themselves are easily manipulated. And we've become a culture of victims of sorts. So I'm going to read this and we'll see where this goes. So, a thought I've been chewing on. Anger comes from a place of injury. Injury comes from some initial trauma, and henceforth perceiving oneself as a victim. The role of victim is something we play. When one automatically plays the victim, one will always shrink from real challenge or adversity. The gut reaction is to cower and deflect, to run away and hide. In my own experience of playing the victim, the path to healing is to look inward and take full responsibility for how I interpret and respond to the world in mind, body, and action. To recognize sometimes the best way to approach fear is to face it and grin and see it for the illusion that it is. I say this here because I think we are living in a culture of victims. We're constantly trying to point the finger and force change rather than look inward and take full responsibility. At some point, we stop turning our childhood trauma into wisdom and use it as an excuse for our failures, We stopped becoming wise and responsible adults. So when you're wondering why toilet paper is running out or why people will believe any story they're told, understand that injured children avoid reality, so they need to tell a story to make the scary parts go away. Some bad man must be out to get us rather than we are creatures of nature, and sometimes nature kills us. We have become a culture of denial. So to pick that up and to be mindful of our time, when bad shit happens in your childhood, this is true for all of us, we use the tools at our disposal, and as children we don't really have complex language, we don't have complex ideas, we don't have a sense of ourselves in the context of a very complex reality that humanity has created. So we do the best we can. What's built into us? The organism of the human being is designed to deny that which, to push away, to distance ourselves. You could even just tie it right into, it's a fight or flight thing. The survival part of us is designed to get away from danger. It's only rarely that we actually fight. The whole fight or flight thing is kind of a misnomer. Usually we run away. Usually we avoid, usually we create distance. So that starts the seminal place of that. I talked about this a bit, the separation in last episode. The seminal injury is that we start to connect danger, the part of us that detects danger, the part of us that is designed to keep us safe. We start wrapping sensations and ideas and beliefs and rituals around this initial thing of danger. Essentially, we distance ourselves from that which is scary. Now, as children, for a lot of you, I know that you can, and this is where I really want to validate your story, we all experience injury of some sort. We all have adults that look down upon us, that subjugate us, that judge us, that tell us we're not good enough, that essentially don't recognize their role as adults because they are also injured. The role of an adult is to be a wise elder. The role of an adult, a true adult, is to be a wise elder and to help bring children into adulthood in a healthy way, to help initiate children into adulthood. This is something we've almost completely gotten rid of in our culture, is helping children to turn childhood trauma into wisdom and to become full, responsible adults who take full responsibility for themselves. If you have a culture of people who take full responsibility for themselves, you have a very, very strong culture, a very strong one. my deepest, well, not my deepest, one of my deep concerns about our culture is that we're so busy rationalizing and denying and flinging arrows and pointing the finger at everyone else that we are just continuing to live in denial. We're continuing to, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We're going to destroy ourselves because we fail to take full responsibility of our individual selves, and that starts at that seminal injury in childhood. So not everyone does this. Clearly not everyone does this, but a lot of people, the initial injury is somehow I need to separate myself from what's scary, from what's hurtful, from the invalidating parent, from the injured parent, from the loud, yelling, screaming parent. I need to separate myself. What does that look like in a child? Well, children are little and they can't run away, so they have to warp their minds. They have to warp their mind to exist in a reality that's not very safe for them. And it's easy before you discount your own childhood experience or that of others, and we say, well, you know, a lot of people have really good childhoods, and just understand even the experience. And this is an observation that I've made by working with a lot of children, by looking at my own story. Just think of the literal experience of being a child. You're tiny, you're small, you're powerless. You're surrounded by people that are 10 times your size. Those people are constantly looking down at you and pointing down at you and telling you how to think and telling you how to be. In some ways, the American story of the child is that you have two narcissistic parents, and please, everyone listening, understand, I'm not saying that you all are narcissists. I'm not saying that I am one. I'm saying that we all have the tendency to perceive ourselves as the center of our own universe, and that we grew up in a culture that has taught us that. So we all want to believe we're correct. Once we're adults, we desperately want to believe that we're correct. So rather than continuing to challenge ourselves and learn and grow, we constantly warp reality around us because that's what we do as children. Because we had parents that taught us that. Our parents imposed their point of view on us because their parents did it to them, so on and so forth. The simple act of being a child is enough to develop these sorts of, technical difficulty. The simple act of being a child is to, in some ways, distance ourselves from that which we perceive as threatening or scary. And from there, we turn it into all sorts of fantasies, ideas, and theories about why the world is a dangerous place. Now, if our adult figures were good shepherds, if they were warriors, if they were wise warrior philosophers who had gone deep within their own story, if they were willing to emerge from the sort of the Plato's cave, let's say, if they were willing to face reality for what it is, then they would teach us as children how to come to terms with fear. Rather than cowering from fear, rather than hiding from fear, rather than stockpiling toilet paper, rather than running around like a bunch of scared chickens, like a bunch of scared children, the adult figures in our life would teach us how to become strong, how to become warriors in the context of a world that can sometimes be dangerous. I'm not saying to become all warrior. I'm saying to find balance within oneself and within one's world. So we take that seminal injury, we deny our reality, and because the world around us tells us we're not good enough as children, we develop a profound sense of shame as well, in addition to the injury. So the layers of denial, the layers of the stories we have to tell ourselves in order to be okay, become very, very, very complex. By the time you reach an adult age, These stories are so complex, it's pretty difficult without doing the work, without looking deep down the rabbit hole, without being willing to admit that you may not be correct at all times. By the time we reach adulthood, these stories are so complex that they become the societal norms that actually damage us. We become a culture of deniers. We become a culture of adult children. And as I've said it over and over, just to be clear, I'm in that category too. These are things that I've been working on throughout my adult life, but progressively more and more and more recognizing the injuries that I have internalized and how I have coped with those injuries. And I say this without any blame anymore to my parents or their parents or the society I was born into. I take blame out of it because I see them all through the eyes of empathy. We're all born into this. We're all part of this. It's up to each of us to take that look in the mirror, and rather than defending, rather than even in this moment, but you're wrong. Yeah, but I was hurt. Yeah, but to just slow down, to recognize that part of our frantic need to find the boogeyman is because we're just profoundly afraid of our own humanity. We're profoundly afraid of our own mortality. Deep down, looking into my own fears, I realize that it's like the surprise death is one of the things that we're most profoundly afraid of. So we're afraid. Even though death is coming for us all, even though it's a part of our existence, it always has been, it always will be, unless humanity does what it's trying to do and make us like immortal somehow. Something I've been working on in myself, something I've been struggling to put words to for quite some time. I've been writing about it. I don't think I'm ready to talk about it at length yet, but is just to recognize how easily, how quickly I will cower from the perception of a threat that is out of my control. And when I say cower, what I mean is the initial reaction of trying to hide, trying to create distance, trying to reduce conflict. How many people say, I just don't like conflict. I'm afraid of conflict. I just can't stand conflict. Well, that's because we've practiced running away from it. We don't want to look fear in the face and grin. We don't want to look fear in the face and smile. We don't want to recognize that sometimes we can't escape. Sometimes we can't get away. So in some ways, that one of the deepest lessons we need to learn is to come to terms with our own fear. It's to come to terms with the fact that we can't always escape danger. We can't always escape the things that we're scared of. Sometimes we need to build up our muscles. We need to build up our voice. We need to look in the mirror and admit to ourselves that we're afraid. We need to unravel the story of fear and recognize the illusion of it. And sometimes you need to face fear and smile at it and fight a good fight. Anything you do in fear will create more fear. What I've seen in the past week is a culture of people who are afraid. It's a culture of people that desperately need a story to confirm that they are victims of some cabal, some dangerous man, some manipulative entity out there who wants to get them. The only manipulative entity is the one that you have internalized and that you use as an excuse to avoid taking full responsibility of your life. Yeah, there's bad dudes out there, there's bad stuff out there, there's scary stuff, absolutely. But we feed it. We feed the monsters in our mind and in our world. We create the void that the narcissists fill. We allow ourselves to be victims. I'll end with, one of the greatest lessons that I've been learning in my life the past 5 years, and I'll just say it simply. If God could have given me a lesson, if God could have provided me with an opportunity to grow, the past 5 years has been a series of experiences where I have had to constantly take a look in the mirror, and rather than blame my circumstances, which at times were quite painful, what I really had to do is take a good look in the mirror and understand how I allowed that to happen in my life, how I allowed myself to be in a position where I felt injured. That takes going pretty deep. That takes going real deep. Understanding how I allowed myself to be a victim. Recognizing that's a story that I've been telling myself for a long, long time. Realizing that it's actually very subtle things that allow those things to happen. A failure to set boundaries. A failure to set boundaries because of a fear of conflict or a fear of being harmed. A fear of being rejected. Childish fears. So I've been working on sitting with fear. I've been working on, and if you've listened to this podcast for a while now, you'll kind of see all these things connecting over time. I've been working on learning how to sit in the fire, so to speak, to tolerate the fear, to tolerate the need to run, to sit with it, to notice it, to recognize the illusion of it, and then to act from a place of love, to act from a place of responsibility, to act from a place of choice. It's kind of like to put my staff in the ground and say, this is my line, this is where I stand, this is who I am. And to be willing to sacrifice for that, to be willing to stand up for that, to be willing to even die for that. So be well out there, friends and neighbors. Take good care of yourselves. Use this time of isolation to look inward. Use this time of isolation to be curious about our behavior under these circumstances. Use this time of isolation to be present with yourself and your families. Take care, everyone. This is Dr. Mark Jesinoski. This is the Wizard Podcast, episode 17. Love you all. Take care. Bye-bye.